title, A Journey Through Fashion History, From Ancient Threads to Modern Chic. Fashion is more than a reflection of trends. It's a dynamic narrative woven through the fabric of history, mirroring societal changes, artistic movements, and technological advancements. Our story begins in the ancient world and travels through the centuries to explore how fashion has evolved. Up to the year 2024. Ancient Egypt, the dawn of fashion. In the sunlit landscapes of ancient Egypt, fashion began to take shape. The Egyptians wore garments that were both practical and symbolic, crafted from linen, a fabric ideal for the sweltering heat. Men donned simple kilts or shendet, which were wrapped around the waist and secured with a belt. Women's attire consisted of long, sheath-like dresses called calasiris, which fell gracefully to the floor. These garments were often adorned with intricate jewelry, which was as much a statement of status as it was an accessory. Wigs, cosmetics, and elaborate jewelry further distinguished the elite, underscoring the deep connection between fashion and social hierarchy. Ancient Greece, drapery and elegance. As we move into ancient Greece, the concept of drapery in clothing becomes paramount. The Greeks favored simplicity and elegance, draping rectangular pieces of cloth into garments that highlighted the natural beauty of the human form. The chiton, a tunic made from a single piece of fabric fastened at the shoulders, became a staple. Women's chitons were belted under the bust, while men's were cinched at the waist. The himation, a large cloak worn over the chiton, added an extra layer of style and warmth. Greek fashion was less about ornamentation and more about the graceful flow and drape of fabric, setting a precedent for future fashion ideals. Ancient Rome, status through garments. In ancient Rome, fashion became a symbol of status and citizenship. The toga, a distinctive garment worn over the tunic, was a hallmark of Roman identity. It was an elaborate draped cloth that signified social rank and political status. Women wore the stola, a long dress often paired with a palla, a shawl or cloak. Roman fashion was highly regulated by sumptuary laws that dictated what different classes could wear, emphasizing the role of clothing as a social marker. The Romans continued the tradition of draped garments, but added a layer of complexity with their elaborate styles and regulations. The Middle Ages, transition and function. With the fall of the Roman Empire, Europe entered the Middle Ages, a period marked by practical and functional fashion. Early medieval clothing was influenced by Byzantine and Germanic traditions, featuring simple, durable garments made from wool. Tunics and cloaks were common, with length and decoration often signaling status. As Europe progressed into the later Middle Ages, fashion began to reflect greater sophistication and regional styles. The advent of tailoring improved fit, and sumptuary laws re-emerged to regulate the display of wealth through fashion. The upper classes began to wear more elaborate and decorated clothing, highlighting a shift from practicality to a blend of function and formality. The Renaissance, opulence and artistic influence. The Renaissance was a transformative period for fashion, driven by a renewed interest in art and culture. In Italy, fashion became synonymous with opulence and luxury. Rich fabrics like silk and brocade, coupled with intricate embroidery and vibrant colors, defined the era. Men's attire included doublets and hose, while women's gowns featured high waistlines and voluminous skirts. France mirrored this trend with its own elaborate styles, including the extravagant gowns and wide panniers worn by women. At the court of Louis XVI, fashion during the Renaissance was not just about clothing but about making a statement of wealth and sophistication. The 18th century, Rococo and practicality. The 18th century brought the Rococo style to the forefront of fashion, characterized by its ornate and extravagant designs. In France, men wore elaborate suits with embroidered waistcoats, breeches, and powdered wigs, while women's fashion featured gowns with wide skirts, supported by panniers and detailed with lace and ribbons. This period was marked by an emphasis on luxury and artistic flair, reflecting the opulence of the French court. In contrast, England saw a shift towards more practical and streamlined fashion, with the Georgian era introducing fitted coats and simpler gowns. This period reflected a growing appreciation for functionality and understated elegance. The 19th century, Victorian elegance and industrialization. The 19th century was a time of profound change, driven by the Industrial Revolution and the Victorian era's emphasis on modesty and formality. Women's fashion became characterized by elaborate layers, including corsets, crinolines, and bustles that accentuated the hourglass figure. Men's fashion evolved into the three-piece suit, featuring a tailored jacket, trousers, and waistcoat. This era also saw the rise of fashion as an industry, with the establishment of fashion houses and the beginnings of mass production. The Victorian era's focus on elaborate and structured garments contrasted with the simpler styles of earlier periods, reflecting the changing social and economic landscape. The early 20th century, modernization and innovation. As we entered the 20th century, fashion underwent dramatic transformations, influenced by global events and societal shifts. The early decades saw a move towards more practical and comfortable garments, particularly for women. The flapper dress of the 1920s, with its loose fit and fringe detailing, symbolized a new era of liberation and modernity. Designers like Coco Chanel introduced simpler, more functional designs, reflecting women's increasing presence in the workforce. The early 20th century was a time of experimentation and innovation, setting the stage for further evolution in fashion. The mid-20th century, glamour and youth culture. The mid-20th century was characterized by a return to glamour and sophistication. Post-World War II, Christian Dior's new look, with its full skirts and cinched waists, epitomized the era's focus on elegance and femininity. The 1950s saw the rise of youth culture, which began to influence fashion significantly. The 1960s and 1972 were marked by experimentation and countercultural movements. Miniskirts, bell-bottoms, and bold prints became symbols of the times, reflecting the social and political upheavals of the era. Designers like Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Cardin pushed the boundaries of traditional fashion, introducing new silhouettes and styles. The late 20th century, diversity and globalization. As the 20th century drew to a close, fashion became increasingly diverse and globalized. The 1980s saw the rise of power dressing, with bold colors, shoulder pads, and statement accessories defining the decade's style. The 1990s introduced grunge and minimalism, as well as the burgeoning influence of streetwear. Designers like Gianni Versace and Calvin Klein became prominent figures, and the fashion industry began to embrace a wider range of influences from around the world. The late 20th century marked a period of significant change, as fashion continued to evolve and reflect the complexities of a globalized society. The 21st century, innovation and sustainability. As we moved into the 21st century, fashion continued to evolve rapidly, influenced by technological advancements, digital media, and a growing emphasis on sustainability. The rise of digital fashion and online shopping transformed the industry, making fashion more accessible and diverse. Designers began to focus on sustainable practices, responding to increasing concerns about environmental impact and ethical production. The fashion of the 2020s reflects a blend of traditional craftsmanship and cutting-edge technology, with a strong emphasis on inclusivity and innovation. Trends like 3D printed garments, virtual fashion shows, and eco-friendly materials have become integral to contemporary fashion. Conclusion: fashion's ever-evolving story. Fashion is an ever-evolving narrative that tells the story of human creativity, social change, and cultural evolution. From the simple linen garments of ancient Egypt to the digital innovations of 2024, fashion reflects the shifting tides of history and the continuous interplay between function, form, and identity. As we look to the future, fashion will undoubtedly continue to adapt, innovate, and inspire, carrying forward the rich legacy of its past, while embracing the possibilities of the future.